Hello everyone. Today, as you can see on the screen, we're going to be talking about today just a single particle, mo. Now we've talked about this particle before, and as a quick review, does anyone remember what the usage of mo is that we have discussed in the past? What does mo mean? As far as particles can mean anything, what's the job of mo? Does anyone remember? I see someone typing. Few people. Yeah, that's one of the ways we see it used. Two, also, it's used to say, to attach to something and say this thing is getting added along with something else. It might be two people doing things, it might be a second place that you're going to, an additional thing that you're eating, what have you. Now, today we're going to talk about technically two different usages of mo. However, before we start, this isn't mentioned in the Renshu lesson. I wanted to suggest an idea to you. And I think if you grab onto this idea and see the next two things we talk about as part of this idea, it will make a lot more sense. Now, like I said, usually particles don't have a meaning in the sense of this particle means this. This is the English word it's attached to. And mo is definitely one of those, more so than others. It has a very fluid usage in a sense. But mo, I'm going to say that mo, and I'm typing this into the channel, mo is used to show things that are not normal. And I know that's kind of a vague statement. Show things that are not normal. And by that, I mean it is for something that may be unexpected, surprising, or not typical. And you're going to see now, of course, what is normal or what is expected or typical. These are all things that are subjective, more or less. However, you're going to see that mo is used to, it's almost like a, hey, look here kind of thing, where it points at something in the sentence and says, hey, this isn't typical in this situation. So I want you to pay attention to it. Now, the two things we'll talk about, one of them binds to this idea much more tightly than the other one. However, I think they both link to it in some way. So I hope this helps you kind of wrap a general concept over all of this. So we're going to talk about, like I said, two. And the first one is some people might not even see it as using mo, and you'll see why. But you often see mo attached to question words. And real fast, before I tell you what the question words are, real quickly, can we think of question words in Japanese? There's several. There's a bunch, actually. There's only a few we're going to talk about today. Three in particular, but what are all the question words that you can think of in Japanese? I'll give you an example. Nani is one. Nani being what. So what are some of the other question words? It's in English, we always call them the WH words, because most of them start with WH. So we have doko, where, dare, which is who, doste, why, or how sometimes. There's a few more. We've hit all the ones we're going to talk about today. Do sureba, I wouldn't really call that a question word. I mean, it's used in a question. What about, no one's mentioned when. Oh, there we go. When. Itsu. What kind of? Donna? Sure. These are all good. Now, like I said, we mentioned the three that we're going to talk about today. And those are, there we go. We're going to talk about nani, dare, and doko. Nani, dare, and doko. And what you're going to see is you'll see the mo attached to these words. With doko, it's a bit special, and we'll see why in just a couple of minutes. But we'll see the mo attached to them. And when they do that, they take on a new form. Nani mo means nothing. Dare mo means no one. And doko ni mo means nowhere. Sometimes doko demo also works. And it is technically you're attaching particles to these things, but they're so commonly understood as these standalone words that in most dictionaries, as well as Renshu's, you will see this taught as a word, as a single word. Nani mo. Not nowhere, excuse me. Nothing. So I'd like you to stick it in your head that we're sticking that mo in there. However, you can learn these as singular words. Nani mo, dare mo, doko ni mo, and I'll type it out into the chat, sometimes doko demo. Now, we don't use everything, everyone, and everywhere. No, you cannot. These are negative forms. There's other ways of describing that, but today we're going to focus on mo with the negative form. If we have a chance, we'll talk about the positive forms as well, but I didn't want to jump into too much. Typically, with the ones we're using today, they're typically negative, but not always. That's a very good question. Like I said, if we have time, we'll talk about the positive ones. But look at them as, nothing, especially nanimo. Nanimo, you can see it says not anything or anything. So it has both the negative and the positive forms if you're looking at my screen share. But typically, we're going to see it as the negative form. Now, let's see how they're used. And like I said, we're not going to talk about the other question words. Why or when, you guys mentioned them. Doshite, for example, or itsu. There's no such thing as no why or no when. We do have never, but we would phrase that in a different way. And today we're focusing on these mo words. So let's take a look at itsumo is the positive form of it, and it would be used as, always or all the time. And yes, it is related. But the lesson in Renshu focuses just on the negative ones today, and so we're going to stick to those. See how much we can get done. So when we have these, we're going to need the negative verbs as well. So let's take a look at these examples. If you say something like nani mo tabemasen, you're saying I eat nothing, or I don't eat anything, or possibly you're talking about the future tense or the non-past. I won't eat anything. And so you'll see this being used depending on the wording that you use. It could be nothing, it could be anything, but we're still focusing on the negative here. So, nani mo tabemasen. I'll give you a few more examples. I bet we have a lot of anime fans in here, but let's say you're not a fan. Say there's just nothing you like. That's not how you spell skijanai. Let's try that again. So you could say, as for anime, I don't like anything. Anime wa nani mo suki janai. Again, note that you need the negative form with this. Nani mo tabemasen. If someone in the class, you're in a class and someone did something bad, and the teacher comes and asks each of the students, hey, do you know what happened to the test papers? And you want to strongly deny it, you should say nani mo shirimasen. I don't know anything, or I know nothing. I don't know anything, or I know nothing. So it's basically unlimited as to what verbs you can use it with. Now, you might notice that if we jump back to our original discussion on mo some time ago, let me give you a quick example. Let's say we're talking about something, talking about eating yesterday. And we had very simple sentences like this. Sushi o tabemashita. Takoyaki mo tabemashita. And we would talk about how mo would replace certain particles. And typically speaking, mo replaces these three: wa, ga, and o. And so here in the negative form as well, we're going to see those wa, ga, and o's disappearing. If you were talking about not eating a particular thing, for example, I don't eat sushi. You might say sushi wa tabemasen. Or depending on the context, you might be using the o. However, with this mo form, we're going to need to drop those. If it's wa, if it's ga, if it's o, they're going to disappear. So that's your nanimo. And we'll practice this in just a minute. So don't worry, we'll get some practice in. Let's take a look at this next one. We're switching over to the casual form for this one. Not because daremo is casual, but just so you get a bit of variety. These can be used in polite forms as well as casual forms. They don't have any inherent politeness attached to them. But right here, daremo inai. There's no one. No one is there. No one is here. Daremo inai. And again, to show you that contrast, you're talking about a specific person, you might say kare ga inai. Or you might say kare wa inai. Again, depending on the context. However, if we're using this no one, all the people, they're not here, we're going to drop the wa, we're going to drop the ga, and it'll just be daremo inai. Now, this one is a bit more interesting. Why not dokomo? Why not dokomo? If you think about places, usually in most sentences, again, not all, that's the tricky thing with Japanese, is there's very few rules that apply in all situations. Once you get into more complex Japanese, you start seeing, oh, well, you can actually use it this way in this specific setup. But for today, let's just focus on when we usually have a place, what are the particles that follow it? So if I say store, and you try and picture a sentence with store in it, what are the particles that are going to come after store? Whether you're going to the store, you're shopping at the store. Ni is one of them. Yeah, if you're using it as showing it as a direction, a direction in which you're heading. Ni, de, if you're describing, the action. I'm shopping at the store. So ni is typically closer to, de is closer to at. Right. And as we noted before, mo doesn't replace those. Mo replaces o, replaces wa, replaces ga. So when we're using this negative form, doko ni mo, then we need to hold on to that ni. So if you are my son, and sometimes he'll say this, Gakko ni ikitaku nai. I don't want to go to school. We've all had that feeling, right? You might be feeling it right now. And this is the sentence you would use. You might also say, if, for example, you like school because your friends are there, but you don't want to study. Gakko de benkyou shitaku nai. I don't want to study at school. However, when we're doing this nowhere, we need to hold on to these. So saying gakko mo ikitaku nai, that sounds like Gakko is the name of a person that you've nicknamed Gakko, and they don't want to go somewhere. So if you don't want to go anywhere, it's doko ni mo ikitaku nai. If you don't want to study anywhere, let's use that second sentence. You could say, どこでも勉強したくない. I don't want to study here. It's a Dr. Seuss book. I don't want to study here. I don't want to study there. I don't want to study anywhere. So, as I noted before, those wa, gas, and os are the ones we're going to be dropping. The de, the ni, and occasionally the a being this one. Dokoe. The a you'd hold on to. Hold on to the a, hold on to the ni, hold on to the de. Now, before we continue, I'd like to practice. And before we practice, I want to go back to that thing I mentioned at the beginning. And if you recall, I said mo is used for, not normal, not typical. There's so many different ways you can describe it. Unexpected, etc. It's used to shine a light on the sentence and say, hey, you should be paying attention to this sentence because it's not your typical contents. And I would argue that these are true. If you said the first sentence, nani mo tabemasen, it's like, I won't eat anything. That's probably not your usual situation, right? Usually people eat something at times of the day. But let's say you're very sick. You're very sick and you won't eat anything, or you don't have an appetite, and you're showing something that's very atypical. You usually eat, but now you're not. Nani mo tabemasen. Let's think about that second sentence. Dare mo inai. Why would you say that? Why would you take the time to say there's no one here? Typically, you say that to highlight the fact that there's no one here because there usually is someone. It's walking into the classroom in the morning and thinking you're going to be late, and you're 5 seconds before the bell rings and you get there and no one's there. And you say, wait, no one's here. This is not normal. That last sentence, I don't want to go anywhere. Again, this is probably maybe someone that is sad or upset and they just don't want to go. They want to stay home, which is cool. They want to stay home, but typically they might go out. So their friend is asking them, hey, let's go to the park. And they say, no, I don't want to. Oh, how about, a cafe? And they say, no, I don't want to go anywhere. Again, it's that spotlight saying, hey, this sentence is not my usual thing. It's not the usual setup. It's not usual for no one to be here. It's not usual to not eat anything. So hold on to that feeling that mo gives you, because it's used like that all the time. So many more usages of mo really tie into this one idea of mo showing specialness, a break from normal. Now, before we continue, let's practice a little bit. And let's jump back to the first one. I think the first one's the easiest, the nani mo. And let's talk about something that you don't want to do. Let's talk about something you don't want to do. We all have those feelings, and it's usually good to get those off your chest, so you don't feel it as strongly. So tell me what's something you just don't want to do at all. You don't want to eat anything. Right now, lately, I haven't found a book that I like reading books, but there hasn't been anything that's really caught my attention lately. So right now, nani mo yomanai. I'm not, or actually, I'm going to change it. I'm going to use so I can use it to describe the state. Nani mo yonde nai. I'm not reading anything right now. So what else? Feel free to use that, the takunai suffix to describe something you don't want to do. Like, I don't want to buy anything. I don't want to study anything. I don't want to eat anything. I don't want to drink anything. I don't want to see anyone. or you can just say something you're not doing at all. So one person, it almost sounds like they might be talking about maybe anime or TV shows. Someone says, "Hey, what TV shows have you been watching?" And they say, "Nani mo mite nai." I'm not watching anything. The person below them gave the super generic but very useful, "I don't want to do anything." They weren't specific at all. They said just all of it. No, thank you. I pass on that. Nani mo kakimasen. I won't write anything. The next sentence is one that we welcome here in our lessons. Nanimo shaberimasen. Like, I'm not going to speak or say anything. That one might be a bit closer to nanimo imasen, like I won't say anything. Shaberu is more the act of conversing, and typically when we use the nanimo, our actions need a direct object. I eat pizza. I don't eat anything. I watch anime. I don't watch anything. So shaberu is more like I converse or I talk. I chat. You don't chat something. You chat with someone. As to the question, yes, there's a huge difference. Nani mo imasen is I won't say anything, but you could. You could say something. For example, someone told you a secret and someone else says, tell me. And you say, no, I won't. Nani mo imasen. Nani mo iemasen means you cannot. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you are physically unable to say it. Your mouth disappeared, Matrix style. It might be more that, for example, you're bound by secrecy. If you said this, you'd be fired. Or if you said this, someone would be really angry at you. So sorry, nani mo iemasen. For example, someone was really upset in class and they confided in you as to why, but they're like, don't tell anyone. And you say, someone else says, hey, why is so-and-so upset? You say, sorry, nani mo iemasen. I can't say. I'm not quite sure what you mean by the question. If it's quite normal for there to be no one, nothing, nowhere, do you still use mo? Mo is kind of part of the package. If you rip out the mo, it's no longer no one. If you rip out, it's no longer nothing. It's not the no one, nothing, nowhere. Those terms cease to exist without the mo. So you definitely need that mo in there. Good questions so far. And we are right at the halfway mark for our lesson. And we need to jump into the larger of the two topics. This one, I feel like nothing, no one, nowhere. These are words that we're familiar with using because there's words, you can look at nanimo and think of it as a word, daremo, tokonimo, and whatnot. And by the way, because this is a beginner lesson, please stick to hiragana. For those of you using kanji, that's fine if you use kanji, but please put the hiragana under it or next to it. That way, those that can't read it are able to do so. In our N4 lessons, it's totally okay to use kanji, but these are beginner lessons, so I try and keep it simple. Now, let's hold on to that thing I talked about, the mo representing not regular, surprising, unexpected. And again, we're sticking with negative sentences today, although if we have time, I think we will. I'll give you some positive examples as well. And this one is usually, whoops. If I can type this, let's see. Give me one sec. Okay, sorry about that. So we're focusing on the first one, but we'll hopefully we'll talk about the second one. We're going to focus on the word even. Now, even, I'm not talking about even odd. I'm talking about even as in the way that we use even in English to describe things that, just like I mentioned, are surprising. They're not the norm. They're not usual. So let me give you a few quick examples in English. You know, now this isn't true. I wish it was, but it's not. If I said I can even speak English, we're using that even to highlight something that's unexpected, right? If you say I can speak English, it's like, oh, okay. I can even speak English. You're saying it because you don't think the other people would expect you to be in a position to speak English. Or not English, Chinese, sorry. Even is used to mark that break, from regularness. Or if you have, a game and, these games are usually meant for people that are older, but you say this game can even be played by kids. Well, let's not do game, let's do puzzle. We say something like this puzzle can even be done by kids. That sounds surprising, right? That usually puzzles you can't, for example, they're too difficult. So the normal would be that the puzzle is not for kids. A kid would look at it and say, no, thank you, too hard. But this puzzle can even be done by kids. This one is a break from normalness, a break from the usual. That's how we use even in English. Take that, hold on to that, and let's use it for mo. Mo is used in the same way. We're going to talk about the negative first. Hopefully we'll get to the positive after. And I'm just going to jump through that real fast. So let's look at this first sentence. Sensei mo wakaranai. That is a very simple sentence. So let's add a bit of context to it. Usually, what do teachers know? Everything, more or less, right? If a teacher is teaching math, you throw math questions at them and they know the answer. If it's a Japanese teacher, they're going to answer your Japanese questions. Typically they're masters of their domain. So if you go online, go on the internet and find this crazy hard math question and bring it to your math teacher and say, hey, teacher, can you do this? And the teacher says, nope, I don't get it. And what would happen? All the kids would go, oh my goodness, the teacher doesn't get it. I can't believe it. We thought the teacher knew everything, right? And you would say this. You'd say, sensei mo wakaranai. Even the teacher doesn't understand. So where's the normal here? Normal would be maybe the children not understanding, the students not understanding. But even the teacher? Sensei mo wakaranai. This one is quite common. Taking the mo and adding it onto the noun is the most common way of seeing this. And let me give you a few more examples. Renshu's particular lesson here is somewhat short. There's a ton of examples in the quizzes themselves, but let me give you a few more examples. So, I have a quick question. I'm blending together what we've done in this group and what we've done in the other group. We have not gone over potential form. Okay, so let's say you're in school in Japan and kids start learning kanji in first grade. They learn hiragana, they learn katakana, they start learning kanji. They get 80 kanji down when they're 6 years old. It's crazy. And let's say, there's a kid that comes in, but they don't study at all. They don't study, they sleep in class or whatever. And the teacher is talking with the parents about their child. And they might say this, you know, first years they're learning kanji, but the reality is a lot of them still can't write it. They might participate in class, but they're not really remembering it. That happens in all classes. So if you say this, for example, and again, we're talking about first grade students, and you say kono ko as in kodomo, kono ko wa kanji ga wakaranai. And you say, oh, this child doesn't understand kanji, and they're 6 years old. That wouldn't surprise anyone. I'd say, yeah, of course they're 6. They just started learning it. Of course they don't get it. But, or actually, we did wakaranai before, so let's do this. Let's do shiranai. Kanji ga shiranai. They don't know. They don't know any kanji. However, this other kid that, is in class, but they're sleeping and whatnot, they might say something like this. Kono ko wa hiragana mo shiranai. They don't even know hiragana. They don't even know hiragana. A few more examples, and then we'll continue. So let's think of normal things. Let's think of normal things because that's the best way to come up with an example of not normal, of unexpected. So, maybe someone is a very picky eater, and they don't even eat rice. They don't even eat rice. So they're in Japan and they don't even eat rice. Gohan mo tabemasen. What? They don't even eat rice? Okay. That's kind of crazy. Or, let's take Pokemon. Pokemon's pretty popular. Most kids like Pokemon. Everyone's got a favorite Pokemon, at least over here in Japan they do. But this kid, Pokemon mo suki janai. They don't even like Pokemon. Wow. I'm not putting any value judgments on them, but this is taking a break from what's normal, what's expected, and using the mo to say, whoa, this is not normal. They even don't like Pokemon? Wow, what do they like? Kind of thing. Now, this second form, I want you to look at and hopefully remember. However, this one is quite rare. Quite rare. If I had to put percentages on it, which I hate to do because they don't really exist, but just to give you a feel, that top one, this noun plus mo, you might see 95% of the time, if not 99% of the time. And then this one down here, it 5%, if that. There's actually a couple of different ways we can look at this one. With this one's a bit special. And in fact, it's a bit outside of the N5 level we're learning at, but it fits in here really well. So we're going to leave it here. So let's look at this. Sushi o tabe mo shimasen. Now what's tabe? Does anyone remember what this is called? Like what form of the verb this is? Excuse me. The stem, exactly. We call it the verb stem. It's basically, if you don't know how to make the verb stem, they're very, very easy. You're not chopping something off the end of the normal verb, you're chopping off the mas. It's just very convenient that taberu, you could chop off the root and have the stem, but that's not the way you do it. You take the mas form and you drop the mas. So a quick example, if you have kaku, which is to write, the stem form is not ka, it's kaki. Because usually you have kakimasu, so kaki. So here we've got stem plus mo plus shimasen. And this one's interesting because this shimasen is just kind of part of the construct. And you might think, wait, I've got two verbs here. What's going on? And that's okay. It's just going to end in mo shimasen. And then the verb before is no longer a verb, actually. It's almost like it's a noun. When you take it and change it to the stem form, it isn't technically, but you can kind of think of it that way. So here, sushi o tabe mo shimasen. They don't even eat sushi. Like the example we gave before, about 10 lines up, I talked about gohan mo tabemasen. The second form is also okay. And I'm going to type them up so they're right next to one another. Mo shinai would also work, if you're in the casual form, yes. And to the question, I'll get to it in just a minute. So the difference here is slight. And if you don't understand the second one, that's fine. Like I said, it's a step more difficult. And you could use the top one, sushi mo tabemasen, and you could get your meaning across. And there would not be any confusion. What's happening here is just like in English, when we think about the word even, we always attach it to the word that is strange. That's the not normal, the unexpected, the surprising, the wow word gets the even. The same thing happens in Japanese with mo. So with the first one, you're focusing on the sushi. As in, they eat other things, but they don't eat sushi. Sushi mo tabemasen. They don't even eat sushi. And you're focusing on the not eating part of the sushi. You're not talking about the action, or rather the lack of action. So the first sentence, you're not picturing them at a store, a sushi restaurant. You're just talking about foods that they like and that they don't like. Foods that they eat and they don't eat. They don't even eat sushi. Why are they in Japan? It's got that kind of feeling to it. The second one, however, sounds closer to them physically rejecting the action of eating sushi. So they're at a sushi restaurant. So I'm picturing a 2-year-old child. Or maybe 2 is too young for sushi, but a small child. And the parent is saying, come on, eat your sushi. And the kid is going, and they're puckering their mouth and they refuse to open it. And so they won't even try to eat the sushi. So the mo is attaching to whatever is the strange part. The first one is focusing on the sushi being strange, as in maybe that's a common food for everyone else to eat. So this person doesn't eat sushi? Wow. The second one is focused on the strangeness of them not eating. It just happens to be sushi. So they're at the restaurant. It's like they went to a restaurant. I want to go to get sushi. And then they go to the sushi restaurant. They sit down. They're like, I'm not eating sushi. And you say, wait, what? Why? Why did you come? It's that kind of thing. So you can see that the times that you would need to stress an action not happening, this refusal to do something, that's not quite as common. So it doesn't happen quite as much. But discussing, they don't even eat sushi, that's a bit more common. Now let me jump in and answer a few questions. Why would it not be taberu no mo shimasen? You don't That's a slightly more difficult question. For those of you wondering, that no is not the no that you're thinking of. It's called a nominalizer. It changes verbs into nouns. And as to why it's not, I'm going to say it's not. I mean, it's just not the way that it is used in natural Japanese. But that would not be grammatically accurate to say. If you'd said taberu no mo shimasen, people would, their ears would perk up. So they'd say, wait, something strange just was said. With the positive form, you wouldn't use that either. You could actually just say this. If you're talking about he even eats sushi, you can actually say this. Watch, it's super easy. Sushi mo nachimasu. That does, you don't do sushi. Kyle-chan's jumping in here to push my bad sentence out of the way. The positive form is actually the exact same as the negative form, just with positive. So negative was they don't, they not even, or they don't even eat sushi. The positive form is they even eat sushi. So it's just a switch over. This verb stem plus shimasen is, as far as I know, limited to the negative. And like I said, fairly rare. But because it fits so well into this lesson, we thought it worthwhile to bring it up. And our irregular verbs, when you say irregular verbs, I'm guessing you mean, there's only a few. I mean, there's only one. There's only suru. And I guess iku and kuru sometimes are sometimes special. But I can't think of an example where you'd use it. You'd probably move, and so let's take a suru example. So for example, benkyo suru. You'd probably use that, and I do hear someone that's got their mic on. You might want to mute your mic. Otherwise, I'll have to server mute you. I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to call it names, but if your mic is on, I would turn it off. So benkyo suru. So there's suru. Suru is an irregular verb because it translates into this she. So there's actually, we're keeping it simple. We're keeping it at the basic level, but there's multiple ways to use even. And we're sticking at level 1, almost the lowest level difficulty. So there's actually one it's called sai, which is fun to say, sai. And you'd probably say something like, you could say benkyo mo shinai, but you'd probably hook it to the mo. You could also say benkyo sai mo shinai, which is a harder grammar structure, but in so many words, it is mo times 3 or times 2. It's just a stronger, more forceful mo. But like I said, most of the time you're sticking with dropping that mo onto a noun. And the suru verbs make it very easy because there's always a noun that comes in front of them, typically. Benkyo suru, unten suru, undo suru. If you're talking about the straight up suru verb, for example, game mo suru, if you're playing a game, the most typical way of seeing this would be game mo shinai. They don't even play games. Oh my goodness, kind of thing. So let's practice. We have about 10 minutes, so not a ton of time. So I'd like to practice once with a negative and once with a positive. I think it'll help get this a bit more into your head. So let's focus on the negative first. So it's going to be mo plus a negative verb coming after it. And you can make something up if there's something that doesn't pop into your head or you don't want to share. But think of something that you don't do that is, and you have to explain your life story and your situation where you are and why this is not typical. But think of something that you don't do that when you tell other people that you don't do, their eyebrows might raise up a little bit. They're like, wait, that doesn't seem typical for your situation. For example, I live in Japan. And guess what people in Japan do? They watch TV, just like people in every country. Every country do. I don't. I don't even watch Japanese TV, which is a break from the normal. Because most people would say, well, you're in Japan. What Japanese TV do you like? It's like, actually, I don't even watch it. And they say, what? It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just a step away from the normal. So let's focus on negative first, things that you don't even do. And then we'll do the positive next. If you're talking about gum, as in chewing gum, the verb that you use is to chew, which is kamu. So you might say kamimasen. For that next sentence, benkyou mo shinai, it's a piece that you might know that we haven't learned in these lessons yet, but you need some kind of contrast particle. So it might be something like kedo or ga. I don't even study, but my grades are good. The next person you won't even get in the bath, you won't even take a bath. That sounds like something, when would you say that? Probably every day, but maybe especially after someone comes home sweaty after sports or exercise. And you say, you're going to take a bath, right? And they say, nope. You say, what? You're not even going to take a bath? You're stinky. So that would be a perfect time to use that. Someone else is talking about not even cooking, and maybe they're a chef. Maybe they're a chef, and you say, well, yeah, so that means you cook all the time, right? It's actually, no, I don't even cook. Which they might have a good reason for it. It might be that they cook all day at work, so they're not interested in cooking at home. But still, it shows that break from normal, or break from what's expected. All right, I'll give you about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to switch to the positive. Now, I do realize that without context, some of these might seem like, well, that's not an even. That's not a surprise, but everyone has their own context. We just don't have the time to talk about it today. All right. While that last person is typing something out, let's switch over to the positive form. Now, the positive form, it's the same thing. You have mo, and then it's just going to be a positive verb. So, my children, they're Japanese mother, American father, so they speak two languages. At least for now they do. But still, from the perspective of other Japanese people, it's still very rare. So I don't think my son would brag about this, but he might say something like this, and it would. Eigo mo hanashimasu yo. I even speak English. And relative to his peers, his classmates, that would be accurate. Might not be the best thing to say, but it would be an accurate thing to say. So what's something that you do that sets you apart from other people, the normal? And if it's hard to think of things, maybe a sport that most people wouldn't do, maybe a high risk sport, or a language that you speak that no one else speaks in your area. It could be a food that typically people don't eat, but you do. Now, this is much later on, but when we get into the potential form, potential being like what you can do, what you can't do, it becomes much easier to use this because you can say, I can even speak this. I can even make, this kind of food. I can even swim. I can even swim underwater for 2 minutes, kind of things. Now, if you know the potential forms, feel free to use them. I'm sure some of you have gotten into that just a little bit. But we are wrapping things up. We've got about 2 more minutes. So it's your last chance to practice and or ask questions if you have any. But while people are typing, I just want to circle back and say, this is this is mo, in the sense that mo marks a break from regularity, a break from expectations. And just by the way, responding to what a couple of people are typing, this always, I think, students often raise their eyes their eyebrows when they hear me say this. But as a teacher, I love lies. And I don't mean it in the sense of lying, as in saying things to other people that are not true in the attempt to deceive them, but in the world of practicing language, I think it's great. Because some of us just don't want to talk about our own personal lives, which is totally cool. Like, that's natural. Also, people don't want to say every morning the teacher says, what did you do yesterday? I studied, I played games. And then you say that same answer for the next 6 months because your typical schedule is the same. And so, in the sense of lying, so trying to use new words, saying silly things that may not be true, I think that's great. It exposes you to more of the language. It's often interesting or funny, which is what gets remembered. That's what sticks in your head more. And you can usually make it so obviously a lie that there's no chance of anyone saying, oh wait, is that true? Kind of thing. Anyway, we're out of time. So thank you so much for joining us. And I mentioned this before, but this video, it is being recorded. This video will be available here in the Renshu Discord, as well as the app, the Renshu app. If you don't know where they are in Renshu, the screen share is currently the website, but it's still the same structure. Under resources and then Japanese lessons, if you go here, then you will get all the lessons we have. We're currently working through the N5, and you'll see right now we don't have the little video icon, but very soon it will pop up right here. And these are all the videos we've done so far. We've got dozens of them. And you can use that to catch up on anything that you haven't done. Otherwise, thank you so much. If you're sticking around for the N4 lesson, we'll see you then. Otherwise, お疲れ様でした。